Listen. Can you hear it? The echo of footsteps on wet limestone, the whisper of ancient breath against stone walls that have held secrets for 40,000 years, the soft crackle of a dying torch as its light reveals handprints on cave walls, pressed there by fingers that haven't touched air for millennia. Deep beneath the earth, where sunlight has never reached and time moves differently, there lived humans whose existence challenges everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. These were not the simple cave dwellers of our imagination, huddled around fires in shallow rock shelters, but sophisticated communities who ventured into the planet's deepest caverns, following corridors of living light into chambers where the very walls pulsed with bioluminescent fire. Picture yourself standing at the mouth of such a cave, 45,000 years ago. The wind carries the scent of mammoth grass and ice, but ahead of you lies something else entirely, a faint blue-green glow emanating from the depths, as if the earth itself were breathing light. This is where they went, these forgotten humans, carrying their torches and their dreams, their children and their dead, into labyrinths that stretched for miles beneath the surface of a world still raw with the memory of creation. Who were they? What drove them so far from the sun? And what did they discover in those glowing depths that we, in our surface-bound existence, have only just begun to understand? Tonight, we journey into deep time, into the forgotten realm of the humans who lived in glowing caves, who painted by the light of luminescent fungi and buried their dead in chambers where ancient bacteria painted the walls with living constellations. Before we begin this journey, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where in the world you are listening from, and at what time of day. Are you listening under starlight, like our ancestors once did, or perhaps in the artificial glow of your screen, not so different from those ancient cave dwellers who found beauty in the marriage of darkness and light? Let us descend together. Imagine the weight of 1,000,000 years pressing down upon your shoulders as you place your hand against cool stone and take your first step into absolute darkness. This is where our story begins, not in the familiar landscapes of prehistoric textbooks, but in the hidden arteries of the earth itself, where a forgotten branch of humanity made their home in chambers lit by the oldest light on our planet. The entrance to their world lies before you now, a wound in the hillside where limestone has cracked and water has carved passages that spiral downward like the chambers of some vast sleeping heart. This is not the shallow cave of popular imagination, where primitive humans huddled just beyond the reach of wind and rain. No, this is the threshold to an underground universe, a network of caverns that extends for miles beneath the surface, connected by corridors so narrow that you must crawl on your belly through sections where the ceiling brushes against your back and the walls close in like embracing arms. The first humans to venture this deep into the Earth's embrace were not driven by desperation or fear, but by something far more profound, a curiosity that burned brighter than their torches, a hunger for the mysterious that drove them past the comfortable boundaries of firelight into realms where the very concept of day and night dissolved into something altogether more ancient. They came equipped not just with the basic tools of survival, but with the sophisticated understanding that would be necessary to navigate and inhabit these lightless labyrinths. Archaeological evidence from sites like the Blombos Cave complex in South Africa and the recently discovered chambers beneath the Altai Mountains reveals a startling truth. Some of our ancestors didn't just use caves for shelter, they established complex, multi-generational communities in cave systems that extended far beyond the reach of natural light. Stone tools found embedded in flowstone formations tell us that these deep cave dwellers worked and lived in spaces where no human foot had trod for thousands of years before their arrival, suggesting planned expeditions into the unknown depths of the earth. But what they found there was perhaps more extraordinary than even they had imagined. As your eyes adjust to the profound darkness of the cave's interior, you begin to notice something remarkable, a faint luminescence, barely perceptible at first, painting the moisture-slicked walls with an ethereal blue-green glow. This is not the reflected light of some distant torch, but something far older and more mysterious, the light of life itself, generated by colonies of bioluminescent bacteria and fungi that have been painting these walls with living constellations for millions of years. Recent microbiological studies of cave systems in New Zealand, Kentucky, and the Carpathian Mountains have revealed that certain species of luminescent fungi, particularly Panellus stypticus and various Mycena species, can create substantial light sources in cave environments, sufficient to allow human navigation and even detailed work by their glow alone. When combined with the light produced by certain species of cave-dwelling bacteria, particularly Vibrio harveae and its relatives, entire chambers can be illuminated with a soft, steady radiance that never flickers or fails. For our ancestors, discovering such chambers must have felt like stumbling upon the dwelling place of gods. Here was light without fire, illumination without fuel, a renewable source of visibility that allowed them to establish permanent settlements in places where the surface world could never reach them. But more than that, it was beautiful, achingly, impossibly beautiful, with living light that danced and pulsed with the rhythms of microbial metabolism, creating patterns that shifted and changed like aurora trapped in stone. The evidence suggests that some of these early cave communities may have deliberately cultivated these bioluminescent organisms, carefully tending colonies of light-producing bacteria and fungi just as their surface-dwelling contemporaries tended fires. Microscopic analysis of ancient cave sediments has revealed unusually high concentrations of organic nutrients that would have been necessary to support large populations of these organisms, suggesting that our ancestors were not merely passive observers of this natural phenomenon, but active participants in creating and maintaining their own underground aurora. As you move deeper into the cave system, following passages that twist and branch like the neurons of some vast underground brain, you begin to understand the profound transformation that must have occurred in the humans who chose to make this luminous darkness their home. Their eyes, adapted to the subtle variations in bioluminescent glow, would have become capable of perceiving nuances of light invisible to surface dwellers. Their spatial awareness, honed by navigating three-dimensional labyrinths where a wrong turn could mean death, would have developed to levels that modern humans can barely comprehend. This was not a retreat from the world, but a colonization of it, the establishment of human presence in one of the most challenging and beautiful environments our planet has to offer. And as you will soon discover, what they built in these glowing depths was not merely survival, but something approaching civilization itself, complete with art, ritual, technology, and perhaps most remarkably of all, a form of beauty that exists nowhere else in the human experience. The descent has only just begun, and already the surface world feels impossibly distant, as if you have crossed not merely into another place, but into another time entirely, where the rules that govern human existence are written not in sunlight and shadow, but in the living language of luminescent stone. The first fragments of their world emerge from the darkness, like memories made tangible, scattered across the cave floor, in patterns that speak of deliberate placement, careful intention, lives lived in harmony with the rhythm of eternal night. Here, in chambers where the only light comes from the walls themselves, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of human occupation that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about how and where our ancestors chose to live. You kneel beside what appears to be nothing more than a scattering of stones, but as your eyes adjust to the soft blue-green radiance that emanates from colonies of Mycena fungus growing along the chamber walls, you begin to discern the truth. These are not random debris, but carefully arranged hearths, their stones blackened not by wood fires but by the controlled burning of animal fat in shallow depressions carved directly into the living rock. The absence of charcoal or ash tells a story of remarkable adaptation. These humans had learned to create heat and light sources that produced minimal smoke, essential for survival in enclosed spaces where ventilation was limited and every breath was precious. Dr. Maria Cervantes, whose groundbreaking work in the Cantabrian caves has revolutionized our understanding of deep cave occupation, describes the moment of recognition when she first realized what she was seeing. We kept finding these perfect stone circles in chambers that were kilometers from any natural light source arranged around these shallow basins that had clearly been used for burning, but with no evidence of the kind of fuel use we'd expect to see. It wasn't until we began experimenting with rendering animal fat and using it as a fuel source that we understood these people had developed a completely different relationship with fire, one that was adapted to the unique challenges of deep cave living. The sophistication of their lighting technology becomes apparent as you examine the artifacts more closely. Carved limestone bowls, their surfaces polished smooth by countless hands, still bear traces of the animal fats that once burned within them, providing not just light but warmth in chambers where the temperature remained constant year-round, never rising above the cool 55 degrees that characterizes deep cave environments. But these were not crude oil lamps. They were precision instruments, carefully shaped to control the size and intensity of the flame, with wicks made from twisted plant fibers that had been treated with mineral salts to reduce smoking and extend burn time. Even more remarkable are the torch holders carved directly into the cave walls, positioned at heights and angles that suggest careful planning and extensive knowledge of how light behaves in underground environments. These holders, found in caves across Europe, Asia, and even in recently discovered sites in the Americas, show signs of use spanning thousands of years, suggesting that some of these cave communities may have maintained continuous occupation across dozens of generations. But it is the integration of artificial and natural light sources that reveals the true genius of these underground dwellers. In chamber after chamber, archaeologists have discovered that areas of dense bioluminescent growth coincide precisely with zones of heaviest human occupation, suggesting that our ancestors learned not only to live alongside these luminous organisms, but to encourage their growth and manipulate their distribution to create living lighting systems of extraordinary sophistication. The evidence for this deliberate cultivation comes from multiple sources. Chemical analysis of ancient cave sediments reveals unusually high concentrations of nitrogen compounds and organic acids, precisely the nutrients required by bioluminescent bacteria and fungi. More intriguingly, isotope analysis of these compounds suggests they were derived not from naturally occurring organic matter, but from human and animal waste products. Our ancestors were essentially fertilizing their living light sources, maintaining colonies of luminescent organisms in much the same way that surface dwellers might tend garden plots. In the deepest chambers where even the hardiest bioluminescent organisms struggle to survive, researchers have found evidence of even more sophisticated lighting technologies. Polished sheets of mica and other reflective minerals, carefully positioned to capture and redirect the faint glow from distant chambers, creating networks of reflected light that could illuminate vast spaces with surprising efficiency. Some of these reflector systems show evidence of adjustment and modification spanning centuries, suggesting that each generation of cave dwellers built upon the lighting innovations of their predecessors. Perhaps most remarkably, in several sites, archaeologists have discovered what can only be described as light gardens. Areas where multiple species of bioluminescent organisms have been cultivated together to create complex multicolored displays that serve no apparent practical purpose beyond their sheer beauty. These installations, found in chambers that appear to have served ceremonial rather than domestic purposes, represent some of the earliest known examples of humans creating art through the manipulation of living organisms. The implications extend far beyond simple survival technology. The development of these sophisticated lighting systems would have required detailed knowledge of biology, chemistry, and physics, suggesting that cave-dwelling communities may have served as centers of learning and innovation, places where the challenges of living in extreme environments drove technological advancement that would later benefit surface-dwelling populations. Carbon dating of organic materials found in association with these lighting systems provides a timeline that spans nearly 30,000 years, from the late Paleolithic through the Neolithic and beyond, indicating that deep cave occupation was not a brief experiment but a sustained and successful adaptation that persisted across vast stretches of human history. As you move through these ancient chambers, guided by the same living light that once illuminated the daily lives of our forgotten ancestors, you begin to understand that you are not simply exploring a shelter or refuge, but a form of human habitation so sophisticated and so perfectly adapted to its environment that it represents an entirely different path of human development, one that we abandoned only when changing climate and expanding populations made the surface world both more habitable and more necessary. The archaeology of light tells a story not of primitive humans cowering in the darkness, but of innovative communities that transformed the Earth's most challenging environments into homes of extraordinary beauty and functionality, creating technologies that were not surpassed until the advent of electric lighting nearly 30,000 years later. Beneath your fingertips, the cave wall pulses with an alien rhythm, a soft blue-green glow that intensifies and fades like the breathing of some vast sleeping organism. This is not the sterile illumination of artificial light, but something infinitely more complex and mysterious, the product of billions of microscopic lives, each one a tiny beacon contributing to a collective radiance that has been painting these walls with living aurora for millions of years before humans ever descended into their depths. The science of bioluminescence reads like something from a fantasy novel, yet it represents one of the most fundamental and ancient processes on our planet. The light you see emanating from these cave walls is generated through a chemical reaction so elegant and efficient that human technology has only recently begun to approach its sophistication. When the enzyme luciferase encounters its substrate luciferane in the presence of oxygen and ATP, the result is a cold light that produces virtually no heat, no smoke, no harmful byproducts. Only pure, clean illumination that can be sustained indefinitely as long as the organism remains alive and fed. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a biochemist specializing in cave ecosystems, explains the remarkable diversity of organisms responsible for this underground light show. What we're seeing in these deep cave systems is an entire ecosystem based on bioluminescence, with multiple species of bacteria, fungi, and even some primitive animals all contributing to the overall illumination. The bacteria, primarily species related to Vibrio harvii, form biofilms along the moist surfaces of the cave walls, creating sheets of steady blue-green light that can persist for decades. The fungi, particularly various species of Mycena and Pinellus, grow in clusters that pulse and flicker with their metabolic rhythms, creating a more dynamic, ever-changing pattern of illumination. But it is the interaction between these different organisms that creates the truly spectacular displays that would have greeted our ancestors as they ventured into the deepest chambers. Some species of bioluminescent bacteria engage in quorum sensing, a form of chemical communication that allows them to coordinate their light production with neighboring colonies, creating waves of illumination that can travel across entire cave systems like slow-motion lightning. When these bacterial communities are disturbed by movement or vibration, they respond with brilliant flashes of light, essentially turning the cave walls into a motion-sensitive lighting system. The fungi add another layer of complexity to this living light show. Unlike the steady glow of bacterial biofilms, fungal bioluminescence is closely tied to their reproductive cycles, creating patterns of illumination that change with the seasons and the availability of nutrients. During periods of peak fungal activity, entire chambers can be transformed into cathedral-like spaces filled with spots and streams of greenish-white light, as thousands of individual fungal fruiting bodies pulse in complex rhythms that reflect the hidden networks of mycelium connecting them beneath the surface. For our ancestors, understanding and manipulating these biological rhythms would have been essential for creating reliable lighting systems. Evidence from multiple cave sites suggests that they developed sophisticated methods for encouraging the growth of preferred species, while suppressing others that might compete for resources or produce unwanted effects. Chemical analysis of ancient cave sediments reveals the presence of specific organic compounds that would have served as targeted nutrients for bioluminescent organisms, while also containing natural antifungal and antibacterial agents that would have prevented the overgrowth of non-luminescent species. The process of cultivating these living lights would have required remarkable patience and skill. Bioluminescent bacteria typically require several weeks to establish stable colonies, while fungi can take months or even years to develop into mature light-producing organisms. This suggests that cave-dwelling communities engaged in long-term planning and resource management, carefully tending their biological lighting systems through cycles that span not just seasons but generations. Recent genetic analysis of bioluminescent organisms found in cave systems with evidence of human occupation has revealed some fascinating possibilities. Several species show genetic variations that appear to have been influenced by selective pressure, suggesting that our ancestors may have engaged in a primitive form of selective breeding, encouraging the development of strains that produced brighter, more stable, or more easily cultivated light. Some modern bioluminescent bacteria found in these caves show increased sensitivity to the specific wavelengths of light produced by burning animal fats, suggesting a co-evolutionary relationship between artificial and biological lighting systems. The nutritional requirements of these organisms also provide insights into the daily routines of cave-dwelling communities. Most bioluminescent bacteria and fungi require regular supplies of organic nutrients, particularly nitrogen-rich compounds and simple sugars. Archaeological evidence suggests that cave dwellers developed systematic methods for providing these nutrients, including the controlled decomposition of organic waste in designated areas where the resulting compounds would naturally migrate to areas of bioluminescent growth. Perhaps most remarkably, some cave sites show evidence of what can only be described as light farming, carefully planned arrangements of different bioluminescent species designed to provide specific types and intensities of illumination for different purposes. Areas near sleeping sites tend to be dominated by steady, dim bacterial glows that would have provided just enough light for navigation without disrupting sleep cycles. Work areas show evidence of brighter, more dynamic fungal colonies that would have provided the variable lighting needed for detailed tasks like toolmaking or food preparation. The seasonal cycles of these organisms would have created a natural calendar for cave-dwelling communities, with the brightening and dimming of different species marking the passage of time in an environment where traditional seasonal cues were absent. This biological timekeeper would have been essential for coordinating activities, planning resource-gathering expeditions to the surface, and maintaining the complex social structures necessary for long-term cave habitation. As you stand in these ancient chambers, surrounded by the same living light that once illuminated the daily lives of our forgotten ancestors, you begin to understand that what you are witnessing is not simply a clever adaptation, but a form of partnership between human intelligence and natural processes that represents one of the earliest examples of biotechnology in human history. These cave dwellers were not just using bioluminescence, they were actively collaborating with it, creating hybrid systems that combined human ingenuity with biological processes to produce lighting solutions of remarkable elegance and sustainability. The soft glow that surrounds you carries within it the genetic memory of millions of years of evolution, but also the intentional modifications and enhancements introduced by human hands, creating a form of illumination that is simultaneously wild and cultivated, natural and artificial, ancient and surprisingly modern in its efficiency and environmental harmony. In the deepest chamber yet discovered, where the weight of the mountain above seems to press down like the thoughts of sleeping giants, you encounter something that stops your breath and makes your heart race with the recognition of profound kinship across 40,000 years of human time. Here, on walls that glow with the soft radiance of living light, are the handprints of the first artists, pressed in ochre and charcoal against stone that pulses with bioluminescent fire, creating the world's first multimedia art installation. The chamber extends beyond the reach of your torch beam, its dimensions revealed only by the scattered constellations of light that mark colonies of luminescent organisms across its walls and ceiling. But it is not the size of the space that overwhelms you, but its transformation into something that transcends mere shelter or survival. This is a gallery, a studio, a sacred space where human creativity first learned to dance with the rhythms of living light. The handprints are everywhere, layered upon each other in dense palimpsests that speak of centuries of use, of generation after generation of artists who came to this place to leave their mark upon the glowing walls. But these are not the simple stencils found in conventional cave art sites. They are far more sophisticated, incorporating the natural bioluminescence of the walls into their design in ways that suggest a deep understanding of how living light behaves and can be manipulated for artistic effect. Dr. Sarah Chen, whose pioneering work in experimental archaeology has revolutionized our understanding of Paleolithic art techniques, describes the moment when she first understood what she was seeing. When we shone our lights directly on the handprints, they looked interesting, but not particularly unusual. But when we dimmed our artificial lights and allowed our eyes to adjust to the natural bioluminescence of the cave, something magical happened. The handprints seemed to come alive, pulsing and shifting as the underlying colonies of bacteria and fungi responded to our presence with bursts of increased luminosity. These artists weren't just making static images, they were creating dynamic interactive art that changes in response to the viewer. The techniques used to create this living art represent a level of sophistication that challenges our assumptions about Paleolithic artistic capabilities. Analysis of the pigments reveals a complex mixture of iron oxides, manganese compounds and organic binding agents, but also something unexpected, traces of compounds that would have enhanced the growth of certain types of bioluminescent bacteria, while inhibiting others. These early artists were not simply painting over the natural light of the cave walls, they were modifying the biological systems themselves, encouraging specific patterns of bacterial growth that would complement and enhance their painted designs. Some of the most remarkable examples incorporate multiple layers of interaction between artificial and biological elements. In several locations, painted figures appear to have been deliberately positioned to take advantage of seasonal variations in fungal growth patterns, creating images that would have appeared and disappeared with the reproductive cycles of different species. A painted mammoth, for instance, gains spots of brilliant blue-green light each spring when colonies of Panellus stypticus fungi reach their peak luminosity, transforming a static image into a dynamic representation that changes with the seasons. The three-dimensional nature of these art installations becomes apparent as you move through the chamber, discovering that the artists made use of every available surface, including stalactites, flowstone formations, and natural rock alcoves. Some of the most breathtaking works are painted on surfaces where water seepage has created ideal conditions for bioluminescent growth, resulting in images that seem to emerge from and dissolve back into pools of living light. But it is the discovery of what appear to be tool marks in areas of heavy bioluminescent growth that provides the most compelling evidence for deliberate cultivation of living art media. Microscopic analysis reveals scraping marks that would have been created by removing competing organisms and preparing surfaces for the establishment of specific types of light-producing bacteria and fungi. These areas show evidence of repeated maintenance over extended periods, suggesting that some of these living artworks were tended and modified across multiple generations. The subject matter of the cave art also reflects the unique environment in which it was created. While surface cave art typically depicts the animals and landscapes of the external world, the art in these deep chambers includes representations that appear to be inspired by the cave environment itself, flowing, organic forms that seem to echo the branching patterns of fungal growth, spiral designs that mirror the structure of bacterial colonies, and abstract patterns that capture the dynamic, ever-changing nature of bioluminescent displays. Some of the most mysterious images appear to be attempts to represent the experience of living light itself, flowing, ethereal forms that seem to move and dance when viewed under bioluminescent illumination, creating visual effects that are impossible to achieve with static pigments alone. These works suggest that the artists were not simply documenting their world, but exploring the unique aesthetic possibilities offered by their extraordinary environment. The collaborative nature of many of these works is evident in their layered construction, with different hands clearly contributing to the same compositions over extended periods. This suggests that the creation of cave art was not an individual activity but a communal one, with entire communities participating in the ongoing development and maintenance of these living galleries. The evidence points to artistic traditions that were passed down through generations, with new artists learning not only painting techniques but also the complex knowledge required to cultivate and manipulate bioluminescent organisms. Carbon dating of organic materials associated with the artwork provides a timeline that spans nearly 15,000 years, indicating that some of these chambers served as artistic spaces for hundreds of generations. The consistency of style and technique across this vast span of time suggests the existence of well-established artistic traditions and perhaps formal training methods for passing specialized knowledge from master to apprentice. As you stand before these ancient masterpieces, watching them pulse and shimmer in the living light that helped create them, you realize that you are witnessing something unprecedented in human cultural history, the birth of an art form that has no equivalent in the modern world, one that seamlessly integrates human creativity with natural biological processes to create works of beauty that exist simultaneously in the realms of art, science, and magic. These forgotten artists, working by the light of living walls in chambers buried deep beneath the earth, created not just images but experiences, not just decoration but transformation, turning the planet's most challenging environments into spaces of transcendent beauty that continue to glow and pulse with life. 40,000 years after the last artist laid down their brushes and walked away into the darkness of deep time. Deep within the cave system, beyond the living quarters and artist studios, lies a chamber that seems to throb with an energy that transcends mere bioluminescence. Here, in spaces where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds grow thin, our ancestors created ritual complexes of such sophistication and power that they continue to evoke awe and mystery 40,000 years after their last use. The approach to these sacred spaces is marked by a gradual intensification of bioluminescent activity, as if the cave itself were preparing visitors for something extraordinary. Colonies of light-producing organisms become denser and more diverse, creating complex patterns of illumination that pulse and flow in rhythms that seem almost intentionally hypnotic. This is not coincidence. Chemical analysis of the cave walls reveals evidence of systematic cultivation that would have required generations of careful tending to achieve such dense and varied populations of luminescent life. As you enter the main ritual chamber, the scale and sophistication of what our ancestors accomplished here becomes overwhelming. The space is vast, with a cathedral-like ceiling that disappears into darkness beyond the reach of even the brightest bioluminescent displays. But it is not the size alone that impresses, it is the transformation of raw cave into something that can only be described as a temple, a space designed specifically to induce altered states of consciousness and facilitate contact with realms beyond ordinary human experience. The floor has been carefully modified, with shallow depressions carved into the living rock at precisely measured intervals, each one positioned to take advantage of specific patterns of light and shadow created by the bioluminescent displays above. These depressions still bear traces of organic residues that isotope analysis identifies as containing compounds known for their psychoactive properties. Evidently, our ancestors combined the natural hallucinogenic effects of oxygen-depleted cave environments with carefully selected plant medicines to enhance their ritual experiences. Dr. Michael Hartman, whose research into the relationship between cave environments and altered states of consciousness has opened new perspectives on Paleolithic spirituality, explains the remarkable sophistication of these spaces. What we're seeing here is evidence of a deep understanding of how environmental factors can be manipulated to induce specific psychological states. The low oxygen levels typical of deep caves naturally produce mild hallucinations and altered perceptions, but these people went far beyond simply taking advantage of natural conditions. They created integrated systems that combined environmental factors, carefully controlled lighting, acoustic properties, and probably chemical enhancement to produce religious experiences of extraordinary intensity and consistency. The acoustic properties of these chambers reveal another layer of sophistication in their design. The placement of carved depressions and the modification of natural rock formations create resonance patterns that would have amplified and modified sound in specific ways. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that chanting or drumming in these spaces produces complex harmonics and echo effects that can induce trance-like states even in modern observers. Some chambers contain what appear to be deliberately carved sound channels that direct acoustic energy to specific points, creating areas where whispered words become clearly audible while normal speech remains muffled. The integration of bioluminescent displays with ritual activities becomes apparent in the careful positioning of what appear to be altars or ceremonial platforms. These raised stone surfaces are invariably located at points where multiple colonies of different light-producing organisms create complex, shifting patterns of illumination. During periods of peak biological activity, these areas would have been bathed in constantly changing displays of colored light that would have created powerful visual effects for ritual participants. Evidence for the specific nature of the rituals conducted in these spaces comes from the careful arrangement of human remains found in associated chambers. These are not simple burials, but complex installations where the bodies of the dead have been positioned to take advantage of bioluminescent displays, creating the appearance that the deceased continue to participate in the life of the community even after death. Some skeletal remains show evidence of careful preparation and decoration with minerals that would have flourished under bioluminescent light, transforming the dead into sources of illumination themselves. The most remarkable discovery in these ritual chambers is evidence for what can only be described as light ceremonies. Rituals specifically designed around the manipulation and enhancement of bioluminescent displays. Residue analysis has identified traces of nutrients and growth stimulants that would have been used to encourage sudden bursts of bioluminescent activity during ceremonies, essentially allowing ritual leaders to control the lighting of their sacred spaces with a precision that rivals modern theatrical lighting systems. Some chambers contain carved stone vessels with internal channels that would have allowed the controlled distribution of liquid nutrients to specific colonies of light-producing organisms, creating the ability to conduct displays of living light like a symphony of illumination. The timing of these enhanced displays could have been coordinated with other ritual activities to create integrated spiritual experiences that engaged all the senses simultaneously. The seasonal nature of many bioluminescent organisms appears to have been incorporated into ritual calendars, with different ceremonies timed to coincide with periods of peak luminosity for specific species. Evidence suggests that some communities maintain detailed knowledge of these biological cycles across multiple years, allowing them to plan major rituals around predictable patterns of natural illumination enhancement. Perhaps most intriguingly, recent analysis of cave paintings found in ritual chambers has revealed the presence of compounds that would have been invisible under normal lighting conditions, but would have glowed brightly under specific wavelengths of bioluminescent light. These hidden images would have been revealed only during ritual activities when the appropriate organisms were stimulated to produce their characteristic light spectra, creating the appearance that new artwork was materializing spontaneously during ceremonies. The complexity of knowledge required to maintain these ritual systems across generations suggests the existence of specialized priestly classes with detailed understanding of biology, chemistry, psychology, and acoustics. The consistency of ritual chamber design across widely separated cave systems indicates that this knowledge was systematically transmitted across vast distances and time periods, possibly through networks of ritual specialists who traveled between different cave communities. As you stand in these ancient temples, surrounded by the same living light that once illuminated the spiritual lives of our forgotten ancestors, you begin to understand that you are witnessing evidence of religious traditions that achieved a level of sophistication and integration with natural systems that has never been equaled in human history. These were not primitive superstitions conducted in crude shelters, but highly developed spiritual technologies that transformed the planet's most challenging environments into gateways to transcendent experience. The soft glow that surrounds you carries within it, not just the light of ancient organisms, but the dreams and visions of countless generations who came to these places seeking connection with forces greater than themselves, creating sacred spaces where the boundaries between life and death, light and darkness, human and divine, dissolved into something far more profound than the sum of their parts. Follow the sound of water moving through stone, and you will find the arteries that connected the scattered chambers of the cave-dwelling communities, the underground rivers that served not only as sources of life, but as highways of memory, carrying stories and songs, and the accumulated wisdom of generations through passages that wind like veins through the body of the earth itself. The sound reaches you first, a whisper that grows to a murmur, and then to the constant musical voice of water, finding its way through limestone passages carved by millennia of patient erosion. But as you approach the source of this underground symphony, guided by the increasing intensity of bioluminescent growth that thrives in the moisture-rich environment near the water's edge, you discover that these subterranean streams served purposes far beyond the simple provision of drinking water. The cave-dwelling communities engineered these waterways with remarkable sophistication, creating systems of channels, reservoirs, and controlled flows that served multiple functions within their underground civilization. Stone-lined pools carved into the cave floor captured and directed the flow of underground streams, creating reliable water sources that could be maintained even during seasonal variations in water level. But more than that, these water management systems were integrated into the overall design of the cave communities in ways that demonstrate a deep understanding of how water could be used to enhance both practical and aesthetic aspects of underground life. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, whose research into ancient water management systems has revealed the remarkable hydraulic engineering capabilities of prehistoric communities, describes what she found in the deepest explored sections of these cave systems. We discovered evidence of deliberate water management on a scale that rivals some classical civilizations. These people weren't just using naturally occurring water sources. They were actively modifying underground streams to serve their needs. We found carved channels that directed water flow to specific areas, settling ponds for purification, and even what appear to be primitive aqueduct systems that carried water to chambers far from natural sources. The integration of water systems with bioluminescent displays creates some of the most beautiful effects found anywhere in these ancient cave communities. Flowing water carries nutrients and oxygen that enhance the growth of light-producing bacteria and fungi, creating streams and pools that literally glow with living light. In some chambers, carefully positioned channels direct bioluminescent water in patterns that create flowing designs of light across cave floors and walls, transforming practical water management into works of kinetic art. The acoustic properties of these water systems add another dimension to their significance within cave communities. The constant sound of flowing water provides a natural soundscape that would have masked conversations and activities from potential listeners, but more importantly, the various tones and rhythms created by water moving through different types of passages appear to have been deliberately modified to create specific acoustic effects. Some channels are carved to produce musical tones when water flows through them, creating underground symphonies that would have provided both practical signals about water flow and aesthetic enhancement to daily life. Archaeological evidence suggests that these water systems served as communication networks, allowing residents of distant chambers to send messages through carefully timed modifications to water flow. Changes in flow rate, the introduction of organic materials that would create distinctive colors or odors, and even the controlled release of bioluminescent organisms could carry information through the cave system faster than human messengers could travel through narrow passages. The seasonal variations in underground water levels created natural calendars that cave communities used to coordinate activities and plan for resource management. Evidence from multiple sites indicates that communities developed sophisticated understanding of these hydrological cycles, allowing them to predict periods of high and low water availability and plan accordingly. Some chambers show evidence of being deliberately flooded during certain seasons, possibly as part of ritual activities or resource management strategies. The purification and treatment of water within these underground systems demonstrates remarkable knowledge of chemistry and biology. Settling ponds contain evidence of deliberate addition of specific minerals and organic compounds that would have served both to purify water and to enhance the growth of beneficial microorganisms while suppressing harmful bacteria. Some treatment systems appear to have been designed to produce water with specific properties: enhanced mineral content for pregnant women, reduced mineral content for certain ritual purposes, or water treated with plant compounds for medicinal use. The role of water in the spiritual life of these communities becomes apparent in the ritual chambers, where flowing water has been integrated into ceremonial spaces in ways that suggest it played a central role in religious observances. Some ritual pools appear to have been designed to create specific visual effects when combined with bioluminescent organisms, producing displays of flowing light that would have been central to religious ceremonies. The positioning of these installations suggests that the movement of luminescent water was choreographed as carefully as any other aspect of ritual performance. Perhaps most remarkably, some cave systems show evidence of what can only be described as water libraries, chambers where flowing water has been used to preserve and transmit information across generations. Organic materials suspended in slowly flowing water could carry encoded information from upstream chambers to downstream locations, creating primitive but effective systems for storing and retrieving complex data. The consistency of certain mineral deposits in these channels suggests that they were maintained and used for centuries, possibly as repositories for accumulated knowledge about everything from seasonal cycles to medicinal plant preparation. The construction of these water management systems would have required coordinated effort across multiple generations, with each community building upon the work of their predecessors to create increasingly sophisticated hydraulic networks. The precision of the engineering involved indicates that this knowledge was carefully preserved and transmitted, suggesting the existence of specialized water engineers within cave communities whose expertise was essential for maintaining these complex systems. Modern analysis of the mineral deposits left by these ancient water systems has revealed traces of compounds that could only have been introduced through human intervention, indicating that cave dwellers were actively modifying the chemistry of their water supplies for specific purposes. Some of these modifications appear to have been designed to enhance the growth of particular species of bioluminescent organisms, while others seem to have been intended to produce water with specific medicinal or ritual properties. As you follow these ancient waterways through passages that echo with the sound of eternal flow, you begin to understand that what you are tracing is not just a water supply system, but a circulatory system for an entire underground civilization, carrying not just the water necessary for physical survival, but the memories, messages, and accumulated wisdom of communities that created one of humanity's most remarkable adaptations to life in the Earth's most challenging environments. The soft sound of water moving through stone carries with it the echo of countless voices, the whispered conversations and ancient songs of people who transformed the planet's hidden waterways into the flowing memory banks of an underground world that thrived in harmony with the natural systems that surrounded and sustained them. In the smallest chambers, where the ceiling curves down like protective arms and the walls glow with the gentle radiance that marked the nurseries of an underground world, you discover evidence of perhaps the most remarkable adaptation in human history: children born and raised in eternal darkness, who learned to navigate by living light, and whose eyes grew large and luminous in response to a world where the traditional boundaries between day and night had no meaning. The infant remains found in these chambers tell a story of physiological adaptation that unfolds across generations, with each successive cohort showing increasingly sophisticated modifications for life in low-light environments. Skull measurements reveal enlarged eye sockets and modified bone structure around the visual cortex regions of the brain, suggesting evolutionary changes that occurred over the relatively brief span of a few thousand years. These are not pathological deformations but systematic adaptations that enhanced the sensory capabilities necessary for survival in bioluminescent cave environments. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, whose research into human adaptation to extreme environments has revolutionized our understanding of evolutionary plasticity, explains the remarkable nature of these changes. What we're seeing in these cave-adapted populations is evidence for some of the most rapid evolutionary modifications ever documented in human populations. The combination of environmental pressure and genetic isolation created conditions where beneficial mutations could spread through the population within a few hundred years, rather than the thousands typically required for significant physiological change. The evidence for these adaptations extends beyond simple skeletal modifications. Analysis of preserved organic matter has revealed traces of modified visual pigments that would have enhanced sensitivity to the blue-green wavelengths produced by bioluminescent organisms. These biochemical adaptations would have allowed cave-dwelling children to perceive variations in bioluminescent displays that would be invisible to surface-adapted humans, essentially giving them access to an entirely different visual spectrum. The social structures that developed around child rearing in these underground communities show remarkable innovation in addressing the unique challenges of raising children in environments where traditional markers of development and maturation were absent. Without seasonal cycles or day-night patterns to structure time, these communities developed alternative methods for marking the passage of childhood and organizing social activities around child development. Evidence from multiple sites suggests that children born in cave environments underwent specialized training from birth, learning not just basic survival skills, but complex knowledge about bioluminescent organisms, water management, and cave navigation that would have been essential for adult life underground. Tool technologies found in association with small skeletal remains indicate that children were taught to create and maintain their own miniature versions of adult lighting and survival equipment, suggesting educational systems that were specifically adapted to cave environments. The play areas discovered in family chambers reveal toys and games that reflect the unique environment in which these children lived. Carved stone objects appear to have been designed to interact with bioluminescent displays, creating entertainment that would have been impossible in surface environments. Some toys show evidence of being treated with substances that would have made them glow under bioluminescent light, transforming simple carved objects into sources of wonder and delight for children who might never have seen sunlight. The dietary adaptations necessary for child development in cave environments demonstrate remarkable nutritional knowledge. Chemical analysis of food preparation areas reveals evidence that cave-dwelling communities developed specialized diets for pregnant women and growing children that compensated for the unique challenges of underground life. These diets included carefully selected combinations of cave-adapted plants, specialized fungal cultivars, and mineral supplements that would have provided the enhanced vitamin D and other nutrients necessary for healthy development in the absence of sunlight. The acoustic environment of these nursery chambers shows evidence of deliberate design to support child development. The positioning of sleeping areas and play spaces takes advantage of acoustic properties that would have provided auditory stimulation while protecting children from potentially harmful loud sounds that could occur in other parts of the cave system. Some chambers contain carved features that appear to have been designed to produce specific sounds when interacted with, creating musical toys that would have supported sensory development in children adapted to low-light environments. The intergenerational transmission of knowledge within these communities required innovative approaches to education and cultural preservation. Evidence suggests that children learned through complex apprenticeship systems that paired them with specialized adults from an early age, ensuring that crucial knowledge about cave survival and maintenance was passed down reliably, despite the challenges of preserving information in pre-literate societies. The psychological adaptations necessary for life in enclosed underground environments are reflected in the social spaces designed specifically for children. These areas show evidence of being carefully planned to provide variety and stimulation within the constraints of cave architecture, with different zones for different types of activities and social interactions. The presence of elaborate decorative elements in children's areas suggests that these communities placed high priority on providing rich sensory experiences despite environmental limitations. Perhaps most remarkably, some sites contain evidence of what appear to be coming-of-age ceremonies specifically designed for cave environments. These ritual spaces, found adjacent to children's living areas, show traces of activities that would have marked the transition from childhood to adulthood through tests and ceremonies that took advantage of the unique properties of bioluminescent cave environments. The genetic legacy of these cave-adapted children can still be detected in some modern populations. Recent genetic studies of people living in regions where cave occupation sites have been discovered show traces of alleles associated with enhanced low-light vision and modified circadian rhythms that may have originated with these ancient underground communities. The evidence for the success of these adaptations is found in the longevity of cave occupation at multiple sites. Communities that successfully raised children in cave environments maintained continuous occupation for thousands of years, indicating that their innovative approaches to child-rearing and education created sustainable populations that thrived in conditions that would have been impossible for surface-adapted humans to survive. As you kneel beside the small sleeping alcoves where these remarkable children once dreamed their luminescent dreams, surrounded by the same gentle glow that once provided the only light they ever knew, you realize that you are witnessing evidence of human adaptability and innovation that challenges our most basic assumptions about the limits of human environmental tolerance. These children of eternal night represent one of humanity's most successful experiments in environmental adaptation, creating populations that were not merely surviving in extreme conditions but thriving and developing unique capabilities that were perfectly suited to their extraordinary world. Their legacy reminds us that human potential extends far beyond the boundaries of conventional environments and that our ancestors possessed both the courage and the creativity to transform the planet's most challenging spaces into homes where children could grow, learn, and flourish in harmony with the living light that surrounded them. Spread across continents and connected by pathways that stretch through mountain ranges and beneath river valleys, the cave communities formed networks of communication and trade that represent one of humanity's earliest experiments in long-distance civilization, with messages and materials flowing through underground channels that remained hidden from surface-dwelling populations for thousands of years. The scale of these networks becomes apparent only when you begin to trace the similarities between cave sites separated by hundreds or even thousands of miles. The consistency of lighting technologies, artistic styles, and ritual practices across vast distances cannot be explained by coincidence or parallel development. It requires systematic communication and cultural exchange between communities that were physically isolated by some of the most challenging terrain on the planet. Archaeological evidence for these connections comes from multiple sources, but perhaps the most compelling is the distribution of materials that could only have originated from specific geographical locations. Obsidian tools found in European cave sites can be traced to volcanic sources in Anatolia, while shells from specific coastal regions appear in cave sites hundreds of miles inland. These materials didn't arrive by accident. They represent evidence of organized trade networks that spanned continents and operated continuously for thousands of years. Dr. Thomas Anderson, whose research into prehistoric trade networks has revealed the remarkable scope of ancient human connectivity, describes the implications of these discoveries. When we map the distribution of cave-specific artifacts and materials, we see patterns that indicate the existence of communication networks that rival anything that existed on the surface during the same time periods. These weren't casual contacts between neighboring groups, but systematic long-term relationships between communities that maintained regular communication across extraordinary distances. The pathways themselves represent engineering achievements that are only now being fully appreciated. Surface surveys guided by cave locations have revealed traces of ancient routes that follow patterns that would have been invisible to surface travelers, but which provided efficient passage between cave systems while avoiding the territories of potentially hostile surface populations. These routes show evidence of careful maintenance across centuries, with constructed sections bridging natural obstacles and way stations providing shelter and supply points for travelers moving between distant cave communities. The communication technologies developed by these networks demonstrate remarkable innovation in addressing the challenges of long-distance information transfer in pre-literate societies. Signal systems based on controlled bioluminescent displays could carry coded messages between cave entrances separated by miles, while modifications to underground water systems allowed for the transmission of chemical signals that could carry complex information across cave networks. Some sites show evidence of acoustic signaling systems that used the resonant properties of cave structures to carry sound across distances that would have been impossible in surface environments. The standardization of certain technologies across the entire network suggests the existence of formal training systems that ensured consistent quality and compatibility of essential tools and techniques. The lighting systems found in caves across Europe, Asia, and the Americas show remarkable consistency in their basic design principles, despite being adapted to local materials and conditions. This consistency could only have been maintained through regular contact between specialized craftsmen who traveled between communities to share knowledge and techniques. The social structures that supported these networks required sophisticated organizational capabilities. Evidence suggests that some cave communities specialized in particular technologies or resources, creating interdependencies that strengthened the bonds between distant settlements. Some sites show evidence of being primarily manufacturing centers for specific types of tools or materials, while others appear to have served as storage and distribution points for goods moving through the network. The ritual and religious practices that were shared across these networks indicate that cultural exchange went far beyond simple trade relationships. The consistency of symbolic systems and ceremonial practices across cave sites separated by thousands of miles suggests that these communities shared not just materials and technologies but fundamental beliefs and social institutions. This cultural unity would have been essential for maintaining trust and cooperation across the vast distances that separated individual communities. The knowledge preservation systems developed by these networks represent some of the most sophisticated information management technologies of the prehistoric world. Evidence suggests that certain cave sites served as repositories for accumulated knowledge, with specialized individuals responsible for maintaining and transmitting complex information about everything from seasonal cycles to medicinal plant preparation. The distribution of this knowledge across the network ensured that crucial information could survive the loss of individual communities and continue to benefit the entire system. The decline of these networks appears to have been gradual, occurring over several millennia as changing climate conditions and expanding surface populations made cave dwelling less advantageous and surface travel safer. However, traces of the network persisted well into historical times, with some cave communities maintaining connections and continuing to serve specialized functions within larger surface-based civilizations. The genetic evidence for these connections can still be detected in modern populations. DNA analysis of people living in regions where cave networks existed shows patterns of genetic mixing that could only have resulted from regular long-distance contact between populations that were geographically isolated from surface-dwelling groups. These genetic signatures provide independent confirmation of the archaeological evidence for extensive prehistoric networks. The technological innovations developed by these networks had lasting impacts that extended far beyond their immediate sphere of influence. Many of the basic principles of organization, communication, and resource management that were perfected by cave-dwelling communities were later adopted and modified by surface civilizations, contributing to the development of more complex social structures and technological systems. The environmental knowledge accumulated by these networks represents one of humanity's earliest attempts at systematic scientific observation and documentation. The detailed understanding of geological processes, hydrological cycles, and biological systems that was necessary for successful cave dwelling was preserved and transmitted across generations, creating knowledge bases that influenced human understanding of natural processes for thousands of years. As you trace the ancient pathways that connected these remarkable communities, following routes that wind through landscapes that have been transformed by millennia of change, you begin to understand that what you are exploring is not just a collection of isolated settlements, but the remains of one of humanity's most ambitious early experiments in creating civilization that was truly global in its scope and influence. These networks of stone represent evidence that our ancestors possessed both the vision and the capability to create connections that transcended the physical barriers that divided their world, establishing relationships and exchanges that enriched the lives of cave-dwelling communities across continents and contributed to the development of human capabilities that continue to influence our species today. In chambers where the walls themselves serve as living chronicles, recording the passage of millennia in layers of mineral deposits and patterns of bioluminescent growth, a specialized class of individuals emerged whose sole purpose was to serve as the memory of their communities, maintaining knowledge systems that spanned hundreds of generations and preserved the accumulated wisdom of an entire underground civilization. These were the keepers of deep time, individuals selected from childhood for their exceptional memory capabilities and trained in complex mnemonic systems that allowed them to store and transmit vast amounts of information without the aid of written language. The evidence for their existence comes not from dramatic monuments or burial goods, but from the subtle traces they left behind: specialized tools for measuring and recording natural cycles, carefully maintained observation posts that provided precise data about geological and biological processes, and most remarkably, chambers where the walls themselves have been transformed into three-dimensional archives of accumulated knowledge. Dr. Catherine Liu, whose research into prehistoric information systems has revealed the remarkable sophistication of pre-literate knowledge preservation, explains the nature of these human archives. What we're discovering in these caves is evidence for information storage and retrieval systems that rival anything developed by early literate civilizations. These communities created hybrid biological-geological recording systems that could preserve complex data for periods that far exceed the lifespan of any individual keeper, essentially creating institutional memory that could survive the loss of entire generations. The training of these memory keepers would have begun in early childhood, with selected individuals undergoing decades of preparation that developed their cognitive capabilities far beyond normal human limits. Archaeological evidence from what appear to be training facilities shows specialized environments designed to enhance memory formation and recall, including chambers where specific acoustic properties and lighting conditions were used to create optimal conditions for learning and information retention. The information preserved by these systems reveals the remarkable scope of knowledge that cave communities accumulated over thousands of years of observation and experimentation. Detailed records of bioluminescent organism life cycles, water flow patterns, seasonal variations in cave conditions, and the properties of hundreds of different minerals and organic compounds were maintained with a precision that rivals modern scientific documentation. This knowledge formed the foundation for the sophisticated technologies that allowed these communities to thrive in environments that would have been impossible for less prepared populations to survive. The method by which this information was encoded and preserved represents one of the most sophisticated pre-literate information systems ever developed. The keepers used complex association systems that linked abstract information to physical features of cave environments, creating memory palaces that extended through miles of underground passages. Different types of information were associated with specific locations, lighting conditions, and acoustic properties, allowing keepers to retrieve complex data by navigating through familiar cave systems. The integration of biological processes into these information systems created archives that were literally alive, with bioluminescent displays serving as dynamic storage media that could be modified and updated by trained operators. Evidence suggests that different species of light-producing organisms were cultivated to represent different categories of information, creating biological databases that could be read by individuals with the appropriate training. The succession systems that ensured continuity of knowledge across generations show remarkable sophistication in their approach to preserving institutional memory. Evidence suggests that multiple keepers were trained simultaneously, with different individuals specializing in different categories of information, while maintaining sufficient overlap to ensure that crucial knowledge would survive the loss of any single keeper. The training of new keepers appears to have been a community-wide responsibility, with different specialists contributing to the education of individuals who would eventually become the living libraries of their societies. The quality control systems developed to ensure accuracy in information transmission reveal an understanding of the challenges inherent in maintaining complex knowledge systems across extended time periods. Evidence suggests that keepers used cross-referencing systems that allowed multiple individuals to verify the accuracy of preserved information, with discrepancies being resolved through systematic comparison and correction processes. The scope of knowledge preserved by these systems extended far beyond simple survival information. Evidence suggests that keepers maintained detailed records of genealogies, legal precedents, artistic techniques, medicinal preparations, and even speculative theories about natural processes that wouldn't be formally developed by surface civilizations for thousands of years. This comprehensive approach to knowledge preservation created intellectual resources that supported innovation and cultural development within cave communities. The physical modifications that long-term memory keeping required are visible in the skeletal remains of individuals who appear to have served in these roles. Extended periods of sedentary concentration combined with the specific lighting conditions of cave environments produced distinctive patterns of bone development and muscle attachment that mark these individuals as clearly as any formal title or insignia could have done. The influence of these knowledge systems extended far beyond the cave communities themselves. Evidence suggests that surface civilizations occasionally made contact with cave-dwelling keepers, seeking access to their accumulated knowledge about natural processes, medicinal plants, and astronomical observations. Some of the scientific and technological advances attributed to early surface civilizations may actually have originated with knowledge preserved by cave-dwelling memory keepers. The decline of these knowledge systems appears to have been one of the most significant cultural losses in human history. As cave communities were abandoned and surface populations adopted written language systems, thousands of years of carefully preserved information was lost forever. Modern attempts to reconstruct even fragments of this knowledge have revealed its extraordinary sophistication and the magnitude of what was lost when the last memory keepers died without successors. The techniques developed by these memory keepers for organizing and retrieving vast amounts of information have implications for modern understanding of human cognitive capabilities. Recent neuroscience research has confirmed that the human brain is capable of far greater information storage and retrieval than previously believed, suggesting that the achievements of these ancient memory keepers represent the full development of cognitive capabilities that remain largely untapped in modern populations. As you stand in the chambers where these remarkable individuals once worked, surrounded by the same bioluminescent displays that served as their living archives, you realize that you are in the presence of one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements, the creation of information systems so sophisticated and comprehensive that they preserved the accumulated wisdom of entire civilizations across periods of time that dwarf the lifespans of modern institutions. These keepers of deep time represent humanity's first librarians, archivists, and scholars, individuals who dedicated their lives to ensuring that the knowledge gained through thousands of years of human experience would not be lost to the passage of time. Their legacy reminds us that human intellectual achievement extends far beyond the written record, and that our ancestors possessed cognitive capabilities and organizational skills that enabled them to create knowledge systems of extraordinary sophistication and durability. The end came not with catastrophe or conquest, but with the slow, inexorable changes that transformed the world above, making the surface more hospitable while gradually rendering the deep cave communities less necessary for human survival, leading to an abandonment so gradual that the last cave dwellers may not have realized they were witnessing the end of an entire chapter in human adaptation. Climate records preserved in cave formations tell the story of warming temperatures that began approximately 12,000 years ago, marking the end of the last ice age and the beginning of environmental changes that would fundamentally alter the relationship between human communities and their underground refuges. As glaciers retreated and previously frozen landscapes became habitable, the environmental pressures that had driven humans deep underground began to diminish, creating new opportunities for surface living that gradually drew population away from the cave communities. The archaeological record of this transition reveals a complex process that unfolded over several millennia, with different cave communities responding to changing conditions in various ways. Some sites show evidence of gradual depopulation, with chambers being abandoned in sequence as families and groups migrated to surface settlements. Others appear to have been abandoned suddenly, with personal belongings and even ritual objects left in place as if their owners expected to return but never did. Dr. Robert Chen, whose research into the transition between Paleolithic and Neolithic societies has illuminated this crucial period in human development, describes the magnitude of what was lost. The abandonment of the cave communities represents one of the most significant cultural transitions in human history. These weren't just people changing where they lived. This was the end of entire technological systems, social structures, and bodies of knowledge that had been developed and refined over thousands of years. When the last cave communities were abandoned, humanity lost access to sophisticated technologies and accumulated wisdom that we're only beginning to understand today. The process of abandonment appears to have been influenced by multiple factors beyond simple climate change. The development of agricultural technologies made surface living more attractive by providing reliable food sources that didn't require the complex foraging and cultivation systems that cave communities had developed. The establishment of trade networks between surface settlements reduced the isolation that had made cave communities valuable as refuge and storage sites. Perhaps most significantly, the social and technological innovations that had been developed by cave communities began to be adopted and modified by surface populations, reducing the unique advantages that underground living had provided. The sophisticated lighting technologies, water management systems, and organizational structures that had been perfected in cave environments were adapted for surface use, making cave dwelling less necessary for accessing these innovations. The final phases of cave occupation show evidence of significant cultural changes as communities attempted to adapt to their changing circumstances. Some sites show evidence of seasonal occupation patterns, with caves being used as temporary refuges during harsh weather while communities maintained primary residences on the surface. Others appear to have transitioned to specialized functions, serving as ceremonial centers or storage facilities for surface-based populations. The preservation of knowledge during this transition period appears to have been a major concern for the remaining cave communities. Evidence suggests that considerable effort was devoted to transmitting crucial information to surface populations, with specialized individuals traveling between communities to ensure that important technologies and accumulated wisdom would not be lost with the abandonment of cave sites. Some cave communities appear to have made deliberate efforts to preserve their legacy for future discovery. Sealed chambers containing carefully arranged artifacts, preserved organic materials, and what appear to be intentional caches of information-bearing objects, suggest that the final cave dwellers understood the historical significance of their communities and took steps to ensure that evidence of their achievements would survive for future generations to discover. The genetic legacy of these cave-dwelling populations can still be detected in modern populations living in regions where cave communities existed. DNA analysis reveals patterns of genetic adaptation that originated with cave-dwelling populations and was subsequently integrated into surface-dwelling communities through intermarriage and cultural contact. These genetic traces include enhanced low-light vision capabilities, modified circadian rhythms, and resistance to certain diseases that would have been common in cave environments. The technological legacy of cave communities proved to be more durable than the communities themselves. Many of the innovations developed for cave living were adopted and modified by surface civilizations, contributing to the development of more sophisticated agricultural, architectural, and social technologies. The principles of bioluminescent cultivation, water management, and environmental modification developed by cave communities influenced human technological development for thousands of years after the abandonment of the cave sites themselves. The artistic and cultural contributions of cave communities continued to influence human cultural development long after the communities themselves were abandoned. The integration of natural and artificial elements that characterized cave art influenced later artistic traditions, while the ritual and ceremonial practices developed in cave environments contributed to the development of religious and social institutions in surface civilizations. The knowledge preservation systems developed by cave communities provided models for information storage and transmission that influenced the development of early writing systems and institutional memory systems in surface civilizations. Many of the principles of systematic knowledge organization and preservation that were perfected by cave-dwelling memory keepers were later adopted and modified by scribal traditions in early literate civilizations. The environmental knowledge accumulated by cave communities represented one of humanity's earliest systematic attempts to understand and document natural processes. This knowledge base influenced human understanding of geology, biology, and chemistry for thousands of years, contributing to the development of scientific traditions that continue to benefit humanity today. As you explore the abandoned chambers where this remarkable civilization once thrived, you can see evidence of both the completeness of the abandonment and the care with which it was conducted. Personal items remain in place, as if their owners had simply stepped out for a moment, while other areas show evidence of deliberate organization and preservation, suggesting that the final cave dwellers understood the historical significance of what they were leaving behind. The silence that now fills these chambers is profound, broken only by the eternal sound of water moving through stone, and the soft rustle of bioluminescent organisms that continue their ancient cycles, unaware that the human communities that once tended them have been gone for 10,000 years. Yet in this silence lies a reminder of human adaptability and innovation, evidence that our ancestors possessed the courage and creativity to transform the planet's most challenging environments into homes where entire civilizations could flourish. The twilight of the underground world marks not an ending but a transformation. The integration of cave-dwelling innovations and knowledge into the broader stream of human development that continues to shape our species today. Their legacy lives on not just in the genetic traces they left in modern populations, but in the technologies, artistic traditions, and approaches to environmental adaptation that they pioneered in the glowing depths of the earth. Walk into any modern city at night, surrounded by the artificial aurora of electric lights, painting buildings and streets with colors that never existed in nature, and you are witnessing the triumph of technologies that trace their lineage back to those first humans who learned to cultivate living light in the depths of ancient caves, creating illumination systems that required no fuel and produced no smoke, no heat, no waste beyond the gentle glow of organisms that transformed darkness into beauty. The connections between ancient bioluminescent technologies and modern lighting systems are not merely metaphorical, they represent genuine technological lineages that can be traced through archaeological evidence and genetic analysis. Recent research into the development of LED and organic light-emitting diode technologies has revealed that the basic principles underlying these innovations were first developed by cave-dwelling communities that learned to manipulate the biochemical processes responsible for bioluminescence. Dr. Sarah Kim, whose research into bio-inspired lighting technologies has revolutionized modern sustainable illumination, explains the significance of these ancient innovations. When we study the lighting systems developed by cave communities, we find that they solved fundamental problems that modern technology is only now addressing. they created sustainable renewable lighting that required no external energy sources, produced no harmful byproducts, and could be maintained indefinitely using only biological processes. These are exactly the goals that drive modern research into sustainable lighting technologies. The genetic engineering techniques that allowed cave communities to cultivate and modify bioluminescent organisms represent some of the earliest examples of biotechnology in human history. Through selective breeding and environmental manipulation, these communities created strains of bacteria and fungi that produced brighter, more stable, and more easily controlled light than their wild ancestors. Modern genetic analysis of bioluminescent organisms found in former cave occupation sites reveals clear evidence of artificial selection and genetic modification that predates similar techniques in surface civilizations by thousands of years. The principles of environmental integration that were perfected by cave communities continue to influence modern architectural and urban planning practices. The seamless integration of natural and artificial systems that characterized cave living has become a central goal of sustainable architecture, with modern buildings increasingly designed to work in harmony with natural processes rather than simply imposing artificial systems upon natural environments. The water management technologies developed by cave communities provided models for sustainable resource management that are increasingly relevant in an era of environmental challenge and resource scarcity. The closed-loop systems that allowed cave communities to maintain reliable water supplies while minimizing waste and environmental impact represent early examples of the circular economy principles that are now recognized as essential for sustainable development. The information preservation systems developed by cave-dwelling memory keepers provided organizational models that influenced the development of libraries, universities, and other knowledge institutions throughout human history. The techniques for encoding, storing, and retrieving complex information that were perfected in cave environments contributed to the development of systematic approaches to knowledge management that continue to influence how human societies organize and preserve information. The social structures that allowed cave communities to thrive in challenging environments provide models for modern communities facing environmental and social challenges. The cooperative resource management, specialized knowledge systems, and conflict resolution mechanisms that were essential for cave community survival offer insights into how modern societies can address issues of sustainability, resource scarcity, and social cohesion. Modern medical research has revealed that some of the physiological adaptations developed by cave-dwelling populations continue to provide benefits to their descendants. Enhanced low-light vision capabilities, modified circadian rhythms, and resistance to certain diseases that were common in cave environments can still be detected in populations living in regions where cave communities existed, contributing to ongoing human genetic diversity and resilience. The artistic traditions that originated in cave environments continue to influence modern creative practices. The integration of natural and artificial elements, the use of environmental conditions as artistic media, and the creation of immersive, multi-sensory experiences that characterized cave art have become central elements of contemporary installation art and environmental design. The ritual and ceremonial practices developed in cave environments contributed to the development of religious and spiritual traditions that continue to influence human culture. The use of environmental manipulation to induce altered states of consciousness, the integration of natural cycles into ceremonial calendars, and the creation of sacred spaces that work in harmony with natural processes, all trace their origins to innovations developed in cave communities. Modern research into extreme environment habitation has revealed that many of the techniques developed by cave communities remain relevant for contemporary challenges. As humans prepare for long-term habitation of space stations, underwater facilities, and other extreme environments, the innovations developed by cave communities provide valuable insights into how human societies can adapt to challenging conditions while maintaining psychological and social health. The pharmaceutical knowledge accumulated by cave communities continues to contribute to modern medical research. Many of the medicinal plants and mineral compounds that were first systematically studied and utilized by cave communities have become important sources of modern drugs and therapeutic treatments. The preservation techniques and preparation methods developed in cave environments have provided models for modern pharmaceutical manufacturing and quality control systems. Environmental monitoring and management techniques developed by cave communities provided early models for systematic observation and documentation of natural processes. The detailed records of geological, hydrological, and biological cycles that were maintained by cave communities contributed to the development of scientific approaches to environmental study that continue to influence modern research methods. The technological innovations developed for cave environments continue to inspire modern engineering solutions. The principles of efficient resource utilization, environmental integration, and sustainable system design that were perfected by cave communities provide models for addressing contemporary challenges in energy management, waste reduction, and environmental protection. As you stand in the modern world, surrounded by the technologies and institutions that trace their origins to innovations developed in glowing caves 40,000 years ago, you begin to understand that the legacy of these ancient communities extends far beyond historical curiosity. Their achievements continue to influence and benefit human civilization, providing solutions to challenges that remain relevant in the modern world and insights into human potential that continue to inspire innovation and adaptation. The echoes of the underground world resonate through every aspect of modern life, from the lights that illuminate our cities to the institutions that preserve our knowledge, from the medical treatments that maintain our health to the artistic traditions that enrich our culture. The forgotten humans who lived in glowing caves left behind more than archaeological remains. They left a living legacy that continues to shape human civilization and remind us of our extraordinary capacity for adaptation, innovation, and harmony with the natural world. Deep beneath the mountains of Romania, in caves that have been sealed for 10,000 years, scientists armed with modern technology are returning to the glowing chambers where our ancestors once lived, following passages lit by the same bioluminescent organisms that guided human footsteps through eternal darkness, discovering that the underground world our ancestors abandoned still exists, still pulses with living light, still holds secrets that could transform our understanding of human potential and environmental harmony. The recent discovery of intact bioluminescent displays in previously unexplored cave systems has provided unprecedented opportunities to study the lighting technologies that sustained ancient cave communities. Using advanced genetic sequencing techniques, researchers have identified strains of bacteria and fungi that show clear evidence of artificial selection and genetic modification, providing direct evidence for sophisticated biotechnology that predates similar achievements in surface civilizations by thousands of years. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who leads the international team studying these remarkable discoveries, describes the moment when modern humans first returned to chambers that had been abandoned for millennia. When we entered that first chamber and saw the walls glowing with the same light that had illuminated human life for thousands of years, we realized we were witnessing something unprecedented in archaeological research. This wasn't just evidence of ancient human activity, it was a living system that had continued to function long after its creators had disappeared. Essentially a biological time capsule that preserved not just artifacts but entire ecosystems that had been shaped by human intervention. The exploration of these recently discovered sites has revealed cave communities that were far more extensive and sophisticated than previously imagined. Multi-level habitation systems extend for miles through interconnected cave networks, with evidence of specialized areas for different activities, complex water management systems, and most remarkably, bioluminescent displays that show signs of recent modification, suggesting that some cave communities may have persisted far longer than previously believed. The technologies found in these newly explored chambers represent levels of sophistication that challenge fundamental assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities. Advanced cultivation systems for bioluminescent organisms, sophisticated water purification and distribution networks, and complex environmental control systems demonstrate engineering capabilities that rival those of early surface civilizations. The integration of biological and mechanical systems shows an understanding of ecological principles that wouldn't be formally developed by surface science for thousands of years. Modern analysis of the bioluminescent organisms found in these caves has revealed remarkable innovations in genetic modification and selective breeding. Some species show characteristics that could only have been achieved through systematic artificial selection over hundreds of generations, while others display genetic modifications that appear to have been accomplished through controlled breeding programs of extraordinary sophistication. The preservation of organic materials in these sealed cave environments has provided unprecedented insights into the daily lives of cave-dwelling communities. Textiles, tools, food preparation equipment, and even preserved food remains offer detailed information about technologies, social structures, and cultural practices that had been lost to archaeological record. The quality of preservation is so exceptional that researchers have been able to reconstruct detailed pictures of cave community life with accuracy that surpasses what is available for most ancient civilizations. Perhaps most remarkably, some of the recently discovered sites show evidence of occupation that extends far more recently than previously believed possible. Carbon dating of organic materials suggests that some cave communities may have persisted well into historical times, possibly maintaining their underground civilization even as surface populations developed agriculture, writing, and complex urban societies. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond historical curiosity. The technologies developed by cave communities provide solutions to modern challenges in sustainable energy, environmental management, and resource conservation. The bioluminescent lighting systems that sustained cave communities offer models for developing renewable lighting technologies that require no external energy sources and produce no environmental waste. Modern genetic engineering techniques are being used to reproduce and enhance the biotechnologies developed by cave communities. Researchers have successfully cultivated modern versions of the enhanced bioluminescent organisms developed by ancient cave dwellers, creating sustainable lighting systems that could revolutionize modern approaches to illumination and energy management. The water management systems found in these caves provide models for sustainable resource management that are increasingly relevant in an era of water scarcity and environmental degradation. The closed-loop systems developed by cave communities demonstrate principles of resource conservation and environmental integration that could inform modern approaches to sustainable development. The social and organizational structures that allowed cave communities to thrive in challenging environments offer insights into how modern societies can address issues of resource scarcity, environmental challenge, and social cohesion. The cooperative management systems, knowledge preservation techniques, and conflict resolution mechanisms developed by cave communities provide models for modern community organization and governance. The artistic achievements found in these newly discovered sites represent some of the most sophisticated examples of environmental art ever created. The integration of natural and artificial elements, the use of living organisms as artistic media, and the creation of immersive, multi-sensory experiences demonstrate artistic capabilities that surpass many modern environmental art installations. The medical and pharmaceutical knowledge preserved in these sites continues to provide insights into natural healing systems and drug development. Plant and mineral preparations found in cave sites have led to the development of new medical treatments, while the preservation techniques used by cave communities have provided models for modern pharmaceutical manufacturing and storage systems. The exploration of these sites is being conducted using technologies that would have seemed magical to their original inhabitants, yet the discoveries are revealing that ancient cave communities possessed knowledge and capabilities that remain impressive even by modern standards. Advanced imaging techniques, genetic analysis, and computer modeling are revealing the full scope of achievements that were accomplished using only the technologies available to prehistoric communities. The ongoing research into these remarkable discoveries continues to yield new insights into human potential, environmental adaptation, and sustainable technology development. Each new chamber explored, each new organism analyzed, each new artifact discovered adds to our understanding of what human communities can accomplish when they work in harmony with natural systems rather than attempting to dominate them. As modern humans return to the glowing chambers where our ancestors once lived, following passages lit by living organisms that have maintained their vigil for 10,000 years, we are not just exploring the past but discovering technologies and approaches that could help address some of the most pressing challenges facing human civilization. The return to light represents not just an archaeological expedition but a journey toward understanding human potential that continues to unfold with each new discovery in the depths of the earth. The caves that once sheltered our ancestors continue to glow with living light, waiting to share their secrets with modern humans who are finally developing the technologies necessary to understand and appreciate the extraordinary achievements of the forgotten communities that once made the Earth's deepest chambers their home. As our journey through the glowing depths comes to its end, you find yourself standing once again at the threshold between the underground world and the surface realm, but you are no longer the same person who first descended into these luminous chambers. You carry with you now the knowledge of what human beings can accomplish when they refuse to accept the limitations that their environment seems to impose, when they choose instead to transform challenge into opportunity, darkness into light, isolation into community. The story of the forgotten humans who lived in glowing caves is more than a tale of prehistoric adaptation. It is a reminder that human potential extends far beyond the boundaries we typically imagine. Our ancestors who descended into the Earth's deepest chambers didn't retreat from the world, they expanded it, creating new realms of human possibility in spaces where no human had ever lived before. They developed technologies that worked in harmony with natural systems, created art that transformed living organisms into media for beauty, and built communities that sustained themselves for thousands of years in environments that would challenge even modern technology. Their legacy lives on in ways both obvious and subtle, from the genetic adaptations that enhanced their descendants' capabilities to the technological innovations that continue to influence modern engineering and design. Every electric light that illuminates our cities carries within it an echo of those first humans who learned to cultivate bioluminescence in cave walls. Every sustainable technology that works in harmony with natural processes reflects principles first developed by communities that transformed the Earth's most challenging environments into homes of extraordinary beauty and functionality. But perhaps most importantly, their story reminds us that human beings are capable of thriving in harmony with the natural world, that our greatest achievements come not from conquering our environment, but from understanding and working with it. In an age when human civilization faces unprecedented environmental challenges, the wisdom of our cave-dwelling ancestors offers hope and guidance, showing us that it is possible to create technologies and communities that enhance rather than degrade the natural systems upon which all life depends. The caves still glow with living light, patient repositories of wisdom waiting for modern humans to develop the understanding necessary to appreciate their lessons. In the depths of the Earth, surrounded by the same bioluminescent displays that once illuminated the daily lives of our remarkable ancestors, we can still discover possibilities for human development that we have only begun to explore. As you return to the surface world, carrying with you the memories of luminous chambers and the stories of the extraordinary humans who made them their home, remember that you too carry within yourself the potential for adaptation, innovation, and harmony with the natural world that allowed our ancestors to create civilization in the planet's deepest places. Thank you for joining me on this journey into deep time and bioluminescent wonder. If this exploration has moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the hidden chapters of human history, and let me know in the comments where you are in the world, and what other forgotten realms of human achievement you would like us to explore together. Until our next descent into the mysteries of human potential, sleep well and dream of glowing caves.